less in the productive sectors. Because when I say productive sectors, I believe that agriculture is a productive one. Tourism is a productive one also, which together get less than 4%. Well, as I've acknowledged that the Prime Minister's Office and the Ministry of Finance, the Treasury, and the Ministry of Education get the 42% down from 50%. Sir, I must say that failing to invest more in agriculture reinforces food import dependence. So you know Barbados is a country that's highly involved with importation of food. That's why even on my campaign, we were arguing so heavily, for the taxes, the VAT to be removed from food, but we're not going there. Let's look at this here. Failing to invest more in agriculture reinforces food import dependence. I repeat myself, which increases vulnerability to global price shocks. It worsens the cost of living crisis, Mr. President. It leaves the country exposed during crises such as pandemics. And sir, even as much as we love our Prime Minister or the BLP, sir, they can't tell us when the next pandemic will come. So that is why when we're dealing with the estimates, we must prepare for such factors, pandemics, where you have supply chain disruptions, external shocks like oil prices, and global conflict. Even though we can see that there's even Caribbean conflict. Understand, sir? So, these external shocks like the oil prices or global conflict can quickly affect food and import costs. Barbados imports a large share of its food, as I said, sir, yet agricultural funding has not matched this great urgency for climate change and supply chain disruptions and rising global food prices. So that is a concern, sir. While it was on the campaign, we even talked about having coconut water vendor villages. And that is a great idea, sir, because all of that we would have taken into consideration and putting that in the funding. So, Mr. President, my contribution to this debate on this 2026 budget comes with a deep sense of responsibility, not only to this honorable chamber, but also to my party, Friends of Democracy, and also to the people of Barbados who expect that every single dollar that's spent, it makes sense, we have a return, and that every proposal that is placed before the Senate is carefully examined, rigorously tested, and honestly assessed. So, sir, let me further begin by establishing a position of fairness. We are operating within a global environment that is far from stable. As I said, global conflicts are happening. The international economy remains uncertain. Oil prices continue to fluctuate unpredictably. Supply chains are still recovering from disruption, sir. And geopolitical tensions remain elevated. For our small island developing states such as Barbados, these external pressures, sir, are not abstract. There are real consequences for the cost of living, for economic growth, and for fiscal management. And so, Mr. President, it must be acknowledged that the government has made certain efforts. So if their senators aren't clapping when they say that, something is wrong. Because they have made certain efforts to navigate this environment. It has avoided introducing those new broad-based taxation. It has implemented measures aimed at cushioning the impact of rising energy costs. Energy, as expected, was a central focus. The government's decision, sir, to hedge oil at the US dollar 92 dollars US per barrel for the next 3 months is a prudent move. It was a prudent move, offering a measure of short-term stability, sir. In these, I would say, and call it, volatile times. So efforts to cushion the energy costs are necessary and appreciated. It has attempted to maintain a degree of macroeconomic stability in a context where many countries, sir, are really struggling to do that. They are struggling to do so. So not everything in this budget is for any negative comment. I will give a balanced approach, and I'm making that clear today, sir. Even the ability for us to shop, sir, for the courier and postal shipments, the duty-free threshold has been increased, sir, from $60 to $150 Barbados, which means no import duty. So we can do more shopping, Mr. President. So as dashing as we are dressed here today, we can go on Shein, and we can explore, and we can do that. And I'm sure that much of the public will be appreciative of that, sir. Because I surely am. So, sir, these are not insignificant achievements. I know Senator Cummings is laughing because she always dressed her best. So she will capitalize on that. So, sir, these are not insignificant achievements. And it is important that they are recognized and celebrated. However, Mr. President, there's always a but. I must say, Mr. President, acknowledgement must not be confused with endorsement, because while macroeconomic indicators may suggest stability, the lived experience of the average Barbadian, sir, tells a different story. The cost of living does remain high. Households continue to feel pressure. Relief where it is promised often arrives late or insufficiently so. So does this budget truly improve the lives of the people of Barbados is my question today, or does it merely create the appearance of progress, sir? And that's a serious question, because we don't want any budget that is just going to help us to explore fantasies. Because we know that when it comes to fantasy, sir, it lives in our head, but the reality is much different. So we don't want to live in a fantasy world, sir. We don't want any budget that creates fantasies and tells the public that this investment is a great investment, and then at the end of the day, the reality is the public doesn't feel that way. They're not feeling it in their reality. So, sir, it is in answering that question that this budget and this bill, sir, must be carefully scrutinized. And I have to go to Carifesta, sir. I want to go there because I was one that almost got sore throat asking constantly what was spent on Carifesta. And we did not know what was spent after the election, sir, and I don't know if we had known if the results would be different, because we did not know, Mr. President. One of the clearest indicators, sir, of a government's ability to manage public finances is its performance in managing specific projects and events, sir. So we are looking at how the government will manage any event, whether it be World Cup cricket, whether it be Carifesta. We want to know how that event is managed, what profits will come out of that event. In this regard, the experience of Carifesta raises some serious concerns, Mr. President. We were initially told that the Carifesta would cost approximately $4 million. We now see that the cost has escalated to $31.7 million. Sir, that is not a marginal increase. That is not a slight deviation from the projections. That is an increase of nearly 8 times the original estimate. Mr. President, when a variance of that magnitude occurs, it cannot reasonably be attributed to unforeseen circumstances alone. It points instead to a fundamental weakness in planning, budgeting, and financial oversight. But, sir, the matter does not end there, because the figure of the $31.7 million does not include the expenditures associated with the Carifesta House and the Newton Performing Arts Center. These projects have been placed under the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. rather than being included in the Carifesta budget itself. So, sir, as I raise that point, it is difficult to escape the conclusion that this represents a form of fragmented accounting. While technically separate, these projects, sir, were clearly linked to Carifesta. Their exclusion from the main budget, sir, obscures the true cost of the event and limits the ability of the public, and indeed this Parliament, to fully assess the financial implications, sir. This approach undermines transparency. And, sir, we have been asking, pleading for transparency and accountability. And it is something that cannot be undermined because it is necessary. It is an example, sir, of good governance. Good governance carries those elements: accountability and transparency. So, sir, this approach, it undermines transparency and it weakens accountability. And it raises an important question. I jotted down my question here. If the government is willing to present costs in this fragmented manner, how can the public be confident that it is receiving a complete and accurate picture of national expenditure? Sir, fiscal discipline is not only about controlling spending, it is also about presenting spending honestly. And that is all we ask, sir. We know that Carifesta was good. We know that Carol did a good job. It was good, but we still have to ensure that when there's overruns and extra money having to go into these events, when we, the public, have to pay the price, because it's always us. It's not the tourists that come in and just enjoy themselves and then they go back home, because that's what happens. But then it is us who have to pay the price and feel the burden in the end. In the end, sir. Sir, I will now look at housing and governance. And our favorite hope should have been in the HOPE program. But this ain't hope from the bold and beautiful. This was supposed to be hope, a HOPE program that would have benefited Barbadians. Sir, this HOPE program, this is an issue that goes beyond. It goes actually, sir, to the very heart of the public and to the very heart of social stability and human dignity, yes? The HOPE program, particularly the poor housing project in St. John, has already been the subject of public scrutiny. The public scrutinized this, and it was scrutinized by the Auditor General too. Concerns have been raised regarding weak oversight, inadequate controls, and questions about the value of money, the value for our money, sir. So, sir, these findings are significant, yes? They do not come from partisan critique. They come from an independent constitutional authority tasked with safeguarding the integrity of public financial management. So housing is not a discretionary policy area. It is a necessity that is owed to every citizen in this country, one that they should rightfully have. They're rightfully entitled to it. It is an area in which government must operate with the highest standard of accountability and efficiency, sir. And yet, Mr. President, the issues identified suggest that those standards have not been consistently met. So it raises, of course, the fundamental question of trust. So if we're asking for more money to be funding such initiatives, sir, you have to deal with convincing the public, yes, that we can trust you with those funds. We can trust whatever program that you implement. It's going to benefit us. And it's not going to just come up like a fairy tale, but it's actually going to help the members of this society. So if there are deficiencies in the management of housing programs today, sir, what assurance can be given that future allocations will be managed more effectively? Sir, trust in governance is not established through statements of intent. It is not established through statements of intent, sir. It is established through consistent performance. So you have to be consistent. The government has to be consistent in their performance. Remember who they're representing and ensure, sir, that there's transparency and that they can demonstrate results. Because if you want the money, you have to demonstrate that it can bring results. And I know that many of the public will not be convinced about that project because of what had happened previously with the same questions that the Auditor General had. So, sir, the energy policy, short-term relief versus the long-term strategy. Energy is another critical area that deserves critical consideration. The government has implemented measures, sir, aimed at cushioning the impact of the rising food prices, as mentioned, including hedging arrangements, subsidies, and adjustments to the value-added tax and the excise taxes. These measures provide the short-term relief and are, in that sense, yes, appropriate. However, sir, short-term relief must not be mistaken for long-term tax strategy, sir. The government has repeatedly spoken, sir, of energy independence and the transition to renewable energy. These are important and necessary goals, but achieving them requires sustained and substantial investment. So remember those words, sir. We need sustained and substantial investment. It requires expansion of solar capacity, development of energy storage systems, modernization of the national grid, strategic planning and execution over the long term. So, Mr. President, when we examine the estimates, the level of investment required to support this transition is not sufficiently evident. And so we are left with a policy approach that addresses the symptoms of the high energy costs without fully addressing their underlying causes. So, sir, without a clear and adequately funded pathway to energy independence, the country remains exposed, I would say, to the very shocks that these temporary measures are designed to mitigate. And we don't want our wonderful Barbados to be exposed to that, sir. So I want to make a comment too about the reverse tax credits. The importance of certainty and timeliness, sir. So, Mr. President, the reverse tax credit is one of the most prominent measures in this budget. I looked at it and I smiled. I said, yes, it sounds good. It has been expanded both in terms of value and eligibility, and it is presented as a key tool for providing relief to households. So thank God for that. In principle, sir, this is a positive development, yes. However, its effectiveness is undermined by two critical issues: certainty and timeliness. Certainty and timeliness. Timeliness, sir. So I wish to focus on one small statement made by the Minister of Finance, to which no one else like they were paying attention to, but I paid attention to it, sir. Firstly, it has been stated by the Minister of Finance that the government is not obligated to pay the credit if it does not have the financial capacity to do so. This introduces a level of uncertainty, sir, that significantly weakens the policy. A benefit that is promised, sir, but not guaranteed, cannot serve as a reliable basis for household financial planning. Citizens must be able to depend, sir, on the measures announced. Secondly, sir, there is an issue of timeliness, as I said. Even where payments are eventually made, delays, sir, can significantly reduce their effectiveness. Households experience financial pressure in real time. They must purchase groceries weekly. People have obligations in their house to meet, and they are waiting the money. So when you promise people all of these fancy promises, they are looking for delivery, a timely delivery at best, sir. They must pay their bills monthly. They must manage transportation and healthcare expenses continuously, sir. Relief that arrives late will not allow them to meet their immediate needs, sir. So, Mr. President, the success of the reverse tax credits will depend not only on its design, but on its delivery. It must be paid consistently. No ifs or no buts about it. It has to be paid consistently, and it must be paid on time. Without this, it risks becoming a policy that exists in theory, but fails in practice. And as a matter of fact, when these things happen, sir, that is how government will get a bad name, because people are looking for the operation of this measure to be fruitful and not otherwise. This is why one of our policies that we had in Friends of Democracy was that the government should pay back with interest, sir. It's a consideration, but I know it's not one that people will take up very fast and quickly, because we know that payments can be late. But I will continue to advocate and say, if you are late, pay back with interest. It's just fair governing. So, because it can be that the government will be protecting its own interests while failing to implement these equitable repayment practices for the citizen that it owes, okay? Sir, I did forget to ask if I have 1 hour today or two, sir?
As you're well aware, 1 hour, Senator Goodrich.
Only 1 hour, sir? Oh, I thought I had 2. Okay. All right, thank you, sir. Sir, when it comes to the cash grants and targeting measures, the budget also includes a number of cash grants aimed at supporting vulnerable populations. While the intent behind these measures is commendable, their scale and duration does raise some concerns, sir. So a grant of $100, while helpful in a limited sense, is unlikely to significantly offset the rising cost of living, sir. So in practical terms, such an amount can be quickly absorbed by basic expenses. So I can tell you, if I give that to you, Mr. President, and you take that into the market, you will be a witness to what I am saying here, sir. So moreover, the temporary nature of these grants does not align with the ongoing nature of the economic challenges faced by citizens, unfortunately. So similarly, the multiple birth grant, though well-intentioned, and we have no bias against those who have twins or triplets, but benefits only a relatively small segment of the population, sir. Well-targeted support is important, sir. It must be complemented by broader measures that address the needs of the wider population. So I say that in meaning, sir, that, by an act of God, of course, somebody would get a triplet or they may get a twin, but there's a wider population out there who would be grateful to have help while they will have those multiple children, all born in different consecutive years, but who have some needs that they want to be met. Because whatever policy, that the government brings, it will be questioned and people want it to make sense. People want it to be one that can benefit a larger majority instead of a very small group. So even with the Child Wealth Fund, as we look at the opportunity and the responsibility, the Barbados Republic Child Wealth Fund represents a bold and forward-looking initiative, yes. It has the potential to address long-term issues of wealth inequality and to provide meaningful opportunities for, yes, future generations. However, sir, ambition must be matched by careful planning. It must always do so. And I have some key questions, so some key questions would remain, and that is, how would the fund be sustainably financed? What governance structures will be put in place? How will investments be managed? And what safeguards will exist to prevent misuse or political interference, sir? Without clear answers to these questions, sir, then the initiative, well, I would say that it carries a significant risk. A program of this scale must be supported by strong institutional frameworks to ensure that it delivers on its promise. So it must deliver on its promise. I will reiterate that more than once. Sir, I want to bring your attention to the proposal to construct 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools and say that it raises broader questions about public investment priorities. So while investment in sports infrastructure is valuable, it must be considered alongside existing challenges. The recent closure of the aquatic center due to maintenance issues highlights the importance of sustainability. Because we know that the aquatic center had those issues, sir. So before expanding infrastructure, it is essential, sir, to ensure that existing facilities, sir, can be properly maintained. Otherwise, new projects risk becoming underutilized or financially burdensome, sir. Sir, I want to talk about transportation, because transportation is a hot topic in Barbados, and I know that many Barbadians have been asking to what's happening with the transport board. Will bus fare go up? There are many questions on the tongues of Barbadians. So, transportation and economic productivity is where I'm heading. So, traffic congestion remains a significant issue, and the government has proposed infrastructure solutions such as, yes, the flyovers and road expansions. And my party have been thinking about the flyovers. We've been talking about it. But let's stick a pin there. While these may provide some relief, sir, they do not address the underlying issue, of course, of public transportation. And unreliable bus service continues to affect daily life and economic productivity. Without meaningful improvements, sir, in the public transport, infrastructure projects alone will not resolve congestion. Furthermore, concerns regarding the potential privatization of the transport board must be addressed with transparency. The public has a right to understand the government's intentions and the implications of any proposed changes. And again, this goes back to public trust. People want to know, and they have a right to know. It's not that they're malicious, they're not gypsy, they are curious, and they have a right to know what is going on when it comes to the transport section. And the government must supply them with the answers that they request, sir. So the government's GIGA initiative outlines ambitious projections for economic transformation and export growth, sir. While ambition is necessary, it must be grounded in realistic assessments of capacity. Significant challenges remain, which include, sir, a digital skills gap within the workforce, infrastructure limitations, and the need for sustained investment. Without a clear and detailed roadmap, sir, addressing these issues, the projected outcomes may be difficult to achieve. So we need a clear roadmap, sir. So, sir, I would say that this 2026 budget does present, and this bill, of course, as reflected in the appropriation bill, it does present a mixture of commendable intentions and significant concerns. It reflects a government that is responsive and in short term, but uncertain in its long-term strategy. It offers relief, sir, but not always with certainty or timeliness required. It presents ambitious plans. I must say the plans that it has are ambitious, but not always with the detail necessary for the effective implementation. At its core, the budget reveals a series, sir, of contradictions with stability, without security, relief, without certainty, ambition, without capacity in certain areas, and expenditure without full transparency, sir. The people of Barbados deserve policies that are not only well-intentioned, sir, but reliable, timely, and effectively implemented. So, sir, until those standards are consistently met, it is difficult to say that, yes, it is a great budget. So as well promising in parts, ultimately, it will fall short of delivering the comprehensive and sustainable solutions that the country would require. So, sir, we seem to be investing in a lot of transformation, as particularly described by the Ministry of Education Transformation and associated education ministries that were traditionally under the Ministry of Education. They are appropriated twice the amounts invested in health when they used to be similar, but investments in education should be beneficial if done properly. The foreseen harm may be obvious to any student of history. There are many examples of governments that almost destroy countries, sir, in the stubborn pursuit of some of the, I would call them, utopian dreams of transformation. So to reduce the risk of this foreseen destruction, a basic management principle, sir, should be to first do a small pilot and then iteratively improve it until the deficiencies are adequately addressed. So my first set of questions are here onto this topic. Would be were pilots done in each sector, sir, of the economy where major transformation plans are to be implemented at a national level? Were evaluation reports that critically reviewed each plan and recommended improvements done? Were the recommendations implemented in a subsequent iteration of the pilots with similar evaluation reports? That is my question. And have the final recommendations have been incorporated into the National Transformation Plan? For transparency, what were the recommendations and may the evaluation reports be made available for review, sir? And doing a pilot is a great idea because you should always do samples first. And it's okay to get up and say, yes, we have this idea for a breakfast program or for anything that could transform education, but I strongly believe that the pilots must be done. A pilot must be done. You have to do your tests first, sir. So we should not inadvertently rubber stamp national transformation initiatives after the foreseen ruin experienced by some countries who pursued their own transformation plans, sir, without first doing a robust pilot. So that is what we can do. We can learn from other countries where they have failed. We will know, well, no, we're not failing. We will do a robust pilot first so that then we could justify why we need this amount or that amount. And once it is justified, no problem with society. They will accept that the pilot was conducted and it was conducted efficiently and effectively, and then we can implement what we need to. And that is where government will prove themselves, much proof to the public that they always do the right thing and not put the cart before the horse and then trip up everybody. Because some countries have failed in this area and we don't want to do that. So, sir, being over $15 billion in debt, of course, we have no fiscal space to fund untested national transformation utopian dreams that are foreseen to end in disaster if the iterative pilots were not first done. So basically, you get my point, Mr. President. We don't have money to waste. So do the test first, and that is how it should be done. Test first, implementation after. Therefore, if these critical prerequisite plans were not done, then they should be, sir, before wasting the poor taxpayers' money on anything, and then asking, of course, for supplementary amounts to pay for certain wastage. Because when that happens, that is the result. You will have to ask for these supplementary amounts, and then it is the taxpayer's business to be paying for that. So the aim to transform the entire educational system is good, sir. But again, to avoid any mistakes, the prudent way is to do a pilot on a small scale, sir. Identify the problem, sir. Iteratively keep trying until the predefined and agreed benefits are achieved. Only then should a national rollout be considered, I would say. And that is just my opinion. Because we cannot pursue the ways of failures or any society that has failed. I would think that we would look to societies who definitely would have followed the right path and did the pilots and then had a successful educational system. And that's what we're aiming for in Barbados. We want success in the educational system, and I know that the government wants that too. So, sir, traffic management and flyovers, just wanted to go and talk a little bit on that now, because I want to take us back, because the government plans to build these flyovers, yes? And they claim that this was 20 years overdue. Because as we can see now, we're in 2026, and there are no flyovers. Many of the public are still stuck in traffic. People are getting to work late all the time, and it's the government's business to fix it. So I'm glad that there's a conversation about it, because it's something that needs to be addressed. But we just have to make sure that in addressing it, that we address it in the right way, because I know that consultations are going on right now, which I thought the consultations would have happened previously with the public, of course. But we're doing it in a way that is kind of backward, yes, because we are now talking to the public when that could have been done before. So it is useful to be reminded of what happened 20 years ago, sir, so that we may learn from our history rather than be condemned to repeat avoidable mistakes. And I don't want us in this country to repeat any mistakes that could be avoidable. So around November 2004, the government had invited the engineering company, sir, to competitively tender to do a comprehensive traffic management study to identify the causes of our traffic congestion problems and recommend workable solutions. The tenders were submitted in December of 2004. However, the study was never done. Instead, on the 23rd of December 2004, the government invited engineering companies to competitively tender to design, build, and finance the construction of flyovers and road widening, with the tenders to be submitted in 5 weeks, including the Christmas holiday, sir. But what followed was a textbook case of how a project should never be procured or managed. Because we're looking at how this project can be managed, we know that it is something that's very expensive. And I must say up front, one individual, or say a contractor, might come and say it is this amount, and then, you know, the government might be saying that is another amount, and then when you realize that it is a very skyrocketed amount at the end of the day. So the details of such are provided in the following documents. So I have documents there, sir. Those could be adopted for the Honourable Chamber. I have the Barbados Audit Office's special report of the Barbados Road Network Infrastructure Improvement Project issued on the 7th of August of 2009. I also looked at the claim form in the High Court of Justice, the Chancery Division, claim number 8C06C04511, dated the 28th of December 2006. The case Mabey, M-A-B-E-Y, and Johnson Limited against DANOS, Danos and others. You can say et al. There, as we say as lawyers. I also have the sentence hearing of Regina against Mabey and Johnson Limited. The reference number is T200097513, dated the 25th of September 2009, sir. So the Barbados Auditor General did give several recommendations which should be followed. So briefly, a newly formed company with no experience in flyovers made a presentation to the government at that time during the tender period in November of 2004. And on the 2nd of December 2004, during the comprehensive traffic management study tender period, the government approved in principle a project to design, build, and finance the construction of flyovers and road widening. The newly formed company then submitted their proposal on the 15th of December 2004. Engineering companies were invited to tender for the same project on the 23rd of December 2004. The auditor's comments were politely scathing. For example, I will just take some quotes. Section 3:20. The sequence of events noted above brings into question the integrity of the tender process. Section 3:23. Both proposals did not conform to the scope outlined in the letter of invitation and therefore should have been rejected. Section 3:28, appointing a preferred contractor on the basis of an expression of interest was unacceptable, sir. Section 4:8, the ministry's response indicates that the paper to the cabinet did not reflect the ministry's professional or technical staff. From its comments, the ministry also implies that it was not in full control of the project, although it was responsible for it. The ministry's professional and technical staff costed the project at Barbados 58 million. The newly formed company had proposed Barbados 120 million for the same project, and the project would eventually balloon to approximately Barbados 360 million before it was canceled by Prime Minister David Thompson, the late Prime Minister at the time, after the DLP had won that 2008 general election. So the significant difference in what the ministry's professional and technical staff costed the project and what the newly formed company proposed may be explained in the court document, sir, where the owner of this newly formed company was being sued by his former employer. So the court documents does show admitted patterns of approaching developing countries in Africa, South America, and the Caribbean, paying bribes in the form of commissions to senior civil servants and politicians to get a road project, and inflating the contract by adding the bribes to contract amount. So the taxpayers, that's the hard part, are forced to pay the inflated final amount, and those were paid, obviously, those who were paid, quote unquote, so-called bribes, were allowed to keep them. So sir mentioned all of that, so that if the government does plan to build any flyovers, they must state a plan to ensure that they are both designed, they must be built safely and economically, must be built with proper structure and everything, sir. Because we know that in Barbados, we have a lot of road issues. The roads built, and then as soon as the flood swarming, everything destroyed. So they have to be built properly. We don't want nobody cat spraddle, you know, I put it in Bayesian terms, cat spraddle on any road. So I have to mention it, sir. So clearly it cannot be the same 20-year-old plan, sir, that we're looking at, that resulted in the unsafe roads scandals procurement process we already went through, sir. So I summarize that to say that the government did start at that time a proper traffic study to understand congestion, but before that study could even be done, they abandoned it. Instead, they rushed into flyover projects without evidence. So in everything, sir, one must ensure that you don't put the cart before the horse, but you go into these things and ensure that you conduct a proper traffic study first, ensure a fair and transparent tender process, sir, guarantee safe, modern engineering standards, and provide also clear cost accountability. I don't think that is fair, sir, because we don't want that we rush any flyover plan and then we waste money, or that the roads are unsafe, and that is a major concern for me. So I do hope that this chamber will take into consideration all that I have said, because dealing with this bill and a budget carries a declaration of intentions, and it shows us the priorities that this government has. So, sir, after all that I've said, I am finished within my time. So I thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Senator Goodrich.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Sinclair, just before I give the floor to you, let me welcome some guests to our gallery, hosted by Dr. Henderson Carter, Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, is it, at UWI, well known to all of us, and two of his assistants. But the team that he's hosting is visiting from Brooklyn South District, some 15 students and 6 teachers, and the head of that delegation is Amanda Paul, School District Superintendent. And we're happy to have you. I believe that they are studying a bit of our political and educational systems. So I trust you'll find it interesting, and we welcome you to see a small bit of our process here in this appropriations bill. Senator Sinclair.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I am very happy that you stopped me from, well, that you made the announcement that you just made, because I think it coincides very well with my speaking here as Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister responsible for Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, and therefore I want to welcome our students, visitors to Barbados, and I hope that, and they're rearranging the seating arrangements, I see, so I'll just give them a chance to. Oh, you're going into a different room? Oh, they're swapping, okay.
A whole crowd for you.
Huh?
A new crowd for you.
I'll pause then. Yes, I'll go ahead. Okay. So thank you very much, Mr. President. I rise to make my contribution, and I must tell you, having myself had more experience in the other place, as you would have too, Mr. President, in your time serving, we were very much accustomed to, or conditioned to, having in our second reading speeches half an hour to make our presentations. Of course, when I was Minister of Finance, I had a little bit more time at the beginning and at the end than the other members, but half an hour was the time. And I say that because you know, an hour is a long time to speak. Yeah? Yes, an hour is a very long time to speak, especially when you're being publicly broadcast and it's going all over the world on the internet. And so some people feel constrained, pressured even, to have to speak for an hour. I must confess I have no such burden on me, and therefore I'm going to try to contain my comments in a short period, even as I have other commitments to attend to in this building. But the other point I want to make, before I do that, let me congratulate the Leader of the House on her excellent presentation yesterday in introducing this appropriation bill given an overview of the government's program and the estimates of revenue and expenditure, and of course, speaking, I think, quite assuredly and knowledgeably of her new assignment as Minister of Health and Wellness in the country, and of course, with responsibility now additionally of the Sanitation Services Authority. I was really impressed with the leaders' entreaty on these matters, particularly on the matter of health, where she was able to, the honourable member, senator, was able to show a demonstrated knowledge already of the ministry that she has only now been in 1 month, so to speak. And that's commendable. It's a very difficult portfolio, not an easy one that it has the widest public exposure, of course, and therefore I wish her very well in there, and she has quite a few people from whom she can draw and get good example and knowledge and experience and counsel right here in this honourable Senate. And so I think she will be in very good hands. One thing I also want to congratulate the honourable member for, the honourable senator for, is coming into contact with the estimates. I think, with the numbers. Yes, coming into contact with the estimates, not only in terms of the minutiae of the numbers, but actually of what the process entails. Being a traditionalist myself, a little long in the tooth now where politics is concerned, I come from a tradition where the estimates really represent the budget of the government, how government intends to execute its program and programmatic and project works in terms of its capital works program for the upliftment of the country, for the improvement of lives and livelihoods across the land. And the attached appropriations as iterated in the various heads of expenditure and subheads of expenditure gives that understanding. What we saw last week, presented by the Honourable Minister of Finance in the other place, is what we traditionally call the budget. It's a kind of misnomer, so to speak. It's a financial statement of the government, and also those measures attached to give further impetus beyond what we term as the budget, what is really the budget, what we call the estimates, which is what we are debating in here today. We are not debating the financial statement and budgetary proposals that were delivered by the Honourable Minister of Finance last week in the other place. We are debating the Appropriations Bill. And in the context of that debate, some things that I just only recently heard in this chamber pertain to things that are not even covered in that document. And you are very generous, sir. So I know you allowed it to go, but you know, because we do have, and I say this in all seriousness, I mean, I've been around a little while, and I've, you know, been inside the belly of the beast. We have some younger members here who we would not wish to get off on the wrong start by way of misunderstanding what this process is. Because usually when you develop bad habits from the beginning, it is extremely difficult to drop them at the end. And so I would want to counsel those members, and not reflecting negatively on anybody, but that when we come to debate bills in this House, particularly ones as important as the appropriation bill, all bills are important, but the appropriations bill has a the honourable senator who has joined us, Senator Walters, is that's his chat GPT checking in on him to see if the speech he delivered yesterday was delivered correctly.
It disapproved.
All right,
It
disapprove. But that's what he said. I disapprove.
It disapproved everything you said.
We're curious to know the answer, even though the audio did say something about disapproval.
Disapprove.
But anyway, so I'm making that point very seriously, sir, because I think we have to make sure that, you know, we are all Barbadians, and we want to ensure, even though we are on different sides and so forth and so on, we want to make sure that people are trained up in the best traditions of the discourse which happens in these hallowed halls of Parliament. Having said that, there's another thing that I want to say as well, very quickly. And I want to thank Senator Niles for his outstanding contribution. I wasn't present, but I listened to it. Thankfully, the technology now is that you can go back and listen to stuff afterwards. So sometimes if you miss it here, you can, and I listened, and your presentation. You know, the 4 senators who sat down here, there were 3 wise men, but these 4 are 4 wise men, these independent senators. And I listened to them very carefully. But I want to congratulate him on his. I want to congratulate him. No, don't get frightened. But I want to congratulate him on his. I want to congratulate him on his presentation because, sir, and I know you appreciate this as a practicing accountant, even though you're, you know, you've gone beyond the day-to-day practice, but you still remember your accounting profession and so forth. Public finance and public financial accounting are very complicated subjects. I am not an accountant nor an economist, but I worked in the Ministry of Finance. I can tell you it is an extremely complicated subject area. I mean, accountants would say that accounting is complicated anyhow. As engineers would say, engineering is complicated. But there's a special thing about, something a little special about public financial accounting that does not readily come across the average person, let me put it that way, in how the public services of a country are structured and how they are financed. And in the context of that, you see when people who are not necessarily attuned to the finer idiosyncrasies of public financial accounting in practice, and notice I say public financial accounting as opposed to public finance. The economists teach a course at KFL and elsewhere called public finance. That is a particular area of economics, that discipline that is a good one to have if you pass through that, because it gives perspectives not just on the accounting of the national accounts, but also the corollary impact of public policy on the financial management of the state's resources. But in the public financial accounting part of what I'm speaking, Mr. President, there is in the practice certain things which have grown up, and I think Senator Nelly spoke about it. Now, you may say they're not necessarily the best things to do. There might not necessarily be the correct things to do in every circumstance. But in public financial accounting, they do happen, and they are hard habits to break in the sense of how we understand the pristine theoretical application of accounting. And so I have heard this debate, and this is where I'm going, Senator Rogers. I have heard this discourse about supplementaries that the government brings every year, and that transparency, and I believe Senator Walters said it yesterday, transparency and accountability demands that the public financial managers say up front when presenting estimates or budgets for projects and programs what these will cost. Because if you put X amount in an account which could be a mobilization fee, by the way. And then at the end of the financial period, you come back and say, oh, it was more, it cost more, so we needed it. That is a cost overrun. And that is bad accounting. And the government is not being transparent on who has run away with the money and why it costs so much. Please allow me to enlighten you. Well, no, let me put it that way. Please allow me to say that in the course of doing what we do in that book called the estimates of revenue and expenditure. Every year, sometime around October, probably earlier, November, the Ministry of Finance, through its technical officers in the budget section, invite ministries to present their budgets for programs and their budget accompanied to determine what the government spending priorities would be like. And that is a rigorous process that goes through at the technical level between the officers. When that process has reached a certain stage of maturation, it then graduates to the Minister of Finance, who has estimates meetings, and these meetings go for very long periods of time, in which the Minister of Finance and his officials from the Ministry of Finance at the senior management level question, grill. Some ministers of finance do a lot more of that too in the meetings, to come to an understanding of why you are suggesting X or Y program, why it is costing so much, or costing X amount, not necessarily so much, why it is costing what is costing, why it is important to do it now as opposed to another time, how can it be phased in terms of introduction, and so forth and so on, to get a better, firmer, and clearer understanding of what are the priorities for the X ministry or department, and how those priorities fit into government's overall program of national development, both on the current programmatic side and on the capital side, in terms of your capital works program. That's how the process goes. It is extremely intense. It goes on for weeks and weeks and months before the document is produced. And that is not necessarily the bane of some conversation between the Prime Minister and her ministers. That happens through a process of an entire 12-month period over a financial year, where you look at what was proposed last year, what was done and not done, and for what reasons, what are the government's priorities, and then you set those according to what you anticipate will be the government's budget. That is how much money the government is likely to have. And remember, we are operating in a system as a small, vulnerable, open economy where resources are scarce. And there is competition, as the economists will tell you, for scarce resources. Therefore, you have to have that back and forth to determine who's going to get what, where, and when. That is how the process of public finance and public financial accounting is done. It is not an exact science, but we try to approach it with the level of seriousness that brooks accountability and transparency. And therefore, when you see a figure put in the estimates of revenue, that is not put there lightly. It can be put there because some programs may deliver of themselves the particulars to get you down to the last cent. Other programs, because of the nature of the recurrent issues you are facing, are extremely difficult to pin down in that sense. And therefore, you know that when you put a figure in the budget, you know in the back of your mind, this is not likely to be the entire cost. But because the imponderables do not allow me to be able to deliver that degree of accuracy, I therefore essay to say in the program documents, I will put X amount to get this program mobilized, understanding that somewhere down through the period of the financial year, the fiscal period, or the financial period, it is likely that this is going to cost. In fact, it is very likely that this is going to cost more. And all of that, I am saying to honorable senators, and I know you know this, Senator Thompson has been through it several times, so she knows it as well. Probably better than I do. This is done against the government's financial program. So when the honorable leader of government business, he said it spoke, and I want the younger members to come into contact with those schedules and with those appendices, because everybody likes to dive into the middle of the estimates document, and this ministry and that ministry, and this sub-program and that sub-program. But you cannot understand what is in the body of the beast unless you see what is at the head. That is where you get it from. And if Senator Walters, for example, had taken his time to not skip down to hope and this and that and the next and the third, which are all good, salacious political things which an opposition, a senator, what is he? Independent senator.
So what is he? What is he? What is he?
And under the pressure to speak for 2 hours. If he had gone to those memoranda in the front of the document, he would not deliver of himself a statement that the government is not meeting its financial targets. Because on those very pages, it says quite clearly that the government has met its fiscal targets. And that fiscal discipline is still very much the watchword, even though the government has, by natural attrition, divorced itself from the IMF program. The government is no longer in the IMF program. And in order to stand and say that the government is still being directed by the International Monetary Fund, is really a little naughty. Because I know the honorable member knows better. In fact, I believe he said it to me before he came here, but I am not. Anyway. Don't let me bring tales out of school. But the fact of the matter is that those memoranda tell you what is happening. The government also has a committee in place with the private sector, with the unions, the monitoring committee, which has written on these things to say that the government has met its fiscal targets. In fact, the government has so met its fiscal targets that it has been able to have the fiscal room to do some other things.
Bill shots.
Like bring the supplementaries which came. And even in factoring those supplementaries in, the government is still going to run a primary surplus of over 3%. So please, 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 please. I know, you know why I'm not going to be very difficult or hard? Because I know people do not, public finance is sometimes boring, it is not sexy, it is, it is not a fancy thing that you want. But in order to really engage, you have to read these things because it is going to be important down the road to your understanding of how government functions. The second point I want to make in relation to this, and this is not a thing on accountants or anybody, because I passed that stage in my life. You know, some people only know the cost of everything, but they can't tell the value of nothing. Be very careful to understand that there's not only costs in terms of counting numbers, you also have to speak about the value of the input. I'm not getting into the Carifesta thing. If Carifesta in 1982 or 1981 cost $23 million, I don't know how anybody can expect in 2026 it's going to cost $4 million. Right? But the fact of the matter is that yes, it costs, and that is a choice, because government makes choices about what it's going to invest in.
Every day.
But I'm telling you that when you think not just of the costs, and we have to give account, yes, we have to be transparent, yes, all of those good things. We also have to take into account the value of the investment in the young, in the cultural artists, in the not so young, the artists and the artists. And when you look at the multiplier effect, and there will be a report on this to show the impact of it. I remember I was overseas, but I heard all the big debate about Cricket World Cup until the report came out that showed how many millions more than the investment we made in the Cricket World Cup came to Barbados and the rest of the Caribbean. So you have to count the value of it, the multiplier effect, as the economists call, how it percolates through an entire economy. Huh? The artists, the tourism people. At a period when it's considered to be our low period in tourism, beds were full in Barbados. The economy was benefiting. GDP, if you want to call it that, nominal and real. No. But the Minister of Finance is my colleague, my cabinet colleague. I have to defend him. As I have to defend the Minister of Culture as well. And the fact of the matter is that when you calculate the value of the investment in something like a Carifesta, it really can't be seriously contested. I say that humbly. It should not be contested. And people should ask their questions as well. They ought to. That is within their right. And I respect your right to ask those questions, Honourable Senator. But when you're finished with that, also speak, as was done by the Honourable Senator Slocum, about the value of the investment. And let me tell you something, the value of that investment goes beyond money. It goes beyond money. Because what is a country if it does not have a proper culture? If it does not root itself in its cultural underpinnings and values? If we don't have that, then you know we really have to question what we're doing. Like some people say, I did a degree in history at University of West Indies, Carefield, under Professor Beckles, the Vice Chancellor, Sir Hilary Beckles. And I remember people saying, oh, you're doing a degree in history? Why are you doing a degree in history? Well, you can't get a job with that. You know, my first job on leaving university, I graduated in the October, we finished in August. My first job after that was at the Immigration Department. And when I went to the Immigration Department, the Chief Immigration Officer who interviewed me said, and how do you, with your degree in history, intend to operate in a department such as this, specialized department such as this? I said to her, in a moment of inspiration, it had to be, I said, don't concentrate on necessarily the name of the degree. Concentrate on the discipline. There's a reason why it is called a discipline. Concentrate on the discipline. You will receive a trained mind who can make things that may seem complicated less complicated, because I have been put through the rigor of investigation, of analysis, of critical thinking, and of writing. Well, my life didn't last very long as an immigration officer, because 6 months after and that's not my fault, 6 months after I was personal assistant to the Prime Minister of Barbados, the late Erskine Sandiford. And that was my choice. Otherwise, I would still be there. But myself and the Clerk of Parliament, actually, we were young immigration officers together. But I make that point to say that we have to understand the value of things. And then I want to very finally speak, because I really do have to rush off to another meeting, and I apologize. But I really want to speak about ambition. My good colleague here, ambition. We have a way in Barbados now, it seems, to be afraid of being ambitious. we've seemed to be developing a culture where we feel that everything must be a transaction. And it has to be small and retail-like. I submit, Mr. President, that is beginning to be a problem. You know, when and I spoke about this only last week in London at the UK Caribbean Forum. When we started this Bridgetown initiative, when the Bridgetown initiative started, it started with a few people, you know, around the Prime Minister and some of her key advisors and so forth. And we had a meeting here in Barbados and we framed it up and stuff. And it looked so, to me, it looked so ambitious. Like, you would take on the whole international financial, remember, whole international financial community on the architecture and reforming this to get these things in. And,
in the living room.
In a living room, in a small space. And we have lived to see where the Bridgetown Initiative, versions 1, 2, and now Bridgetown 3, are global modes of action that have brought substantial changes to the international financial architecture and promises to bring more. Debt clauses in financial instruments and loans. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, nobody wanted to hear that. You could not even broach that with private people, far less the institutional lenders. And they put it in there because of Bridgetown. The Sustainability Trust and Transformation Trust at the International Monetary Fund never touched that kind of thing. And they created one. Barbados was the first recipient. Debt swaps. Barbados is now not just the largest issuer of debt with debt clauses in them. We are also one of the largest issuers of debt swaps. Huh? Yes. That is what is happening. And that started from a small mustard seed. And my Senator Rogers will tell you, if you have the faith of a small mustard seed, he was wondering if I was coming to him. Then you can do things. You have to have faith. I used to speak about faith, hope, and love. But you got to have faith in yourself, in your capacity to be able to achieve things that are even bigger than you. If you think small, you will grow smaller. But if you expand the horizons of your thoughts and you put the kind of sweat equity in, blood, sweat, and tears in, you will achieve big things. And Barbados is on the road to achieving big things. And therefore, when you hear that this budget has been set against, this estimates has been set against the missions of this administration, and the critical mission being that of transformation, then you understand why it is. And if you say, oh, Prime Minister Morley has all these big ideas, but it is big ideas that make big gains. And that is what we have to do, not to be reckless, fiscally or otherwise. Maintain your discipline as we have, run your fiscal surpluses, but also understand that at some point in time, you have to take some risks if you are going to achieve anything in life. And I want members to read these estimates, understand this debate against that particular price. Yes, we have all going wrong in the world, and as Minister of Finance, I understand the war in Iran, the war in Ukraine, the WTO having its challenges, and we know multilateralism under threat. We know all of these things. But as people, we have to begin first by having confidence that we can achieve. And we can achieve great things because we have done it in the past. And therefore, mission transformation, backed by our Honourable Prime Minister and supported by a cabinet and a parliamentary group and a party which intends to transform Barbados and create better lives for all, begins with our faith in ourselves that we can achieve it. And day by day by day, We have to understand that even if in our own individual rights, honorable senators, we change one life every day, we impact positively one life every day, together, one by one by one by one, we achieve great things together. Mr. President, I think that's a good point on which to conclude. I'm sorry I have to run off, but I do have an emergency meeting in quarters. That's it. Thank you very much, and I'm obliged to you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Zinkler. Who's next? Senator Dr. Honourable.
Mr. President, I rise this morning just half an hour before lunch. And I'm reminded of the oath of my own profession. First, do no harm. Inherently in this oath that doctors take, there's a possibility that we may also do no good. But first, do no harm. It is against this backdrop, to borrow a popular cliche of another political leader, that I state we are living in unusual times. It cannot be business as usual. A budget cannot be consumed like any other budget because we are living in unusual times. Quite often, I used to watch CNN and other news networks for entertainment. I now have to watch these networks for depression and in fear. I feel my anxiety rising to a level that only really equates with that when sandwiched between two ZR vans on the South Coast. And I feel my blood pressure rising. But let me start by really continuing the narrative that Senator Sinclair has stated, and let me thank those of you who unintentionally have been my private tutor for the last few weeks. And months, and probably even longer than that because Senator Thompson is here. Public account financing is not easy to consume. To the average Barbadian, certainly to the average doctor like myself, it is extremely difficult. Quite often, and this is a good thing that I am I'm on the other side, my profession has been accused of using jargon that is unknown to anyone else. And sometimes it comes across as if we're trying to hide something. In fact, a patient quite recently and rightfully said to me, "Stop telling me about hypertension and break it down." And I said, "Well, what could be simpler than it's one word?" And I said, "Well, high blood pressure." This may seem like something minor, but we have to change our communication and style so that the audience is clear, especially when there are topics that are outside of our lexicon. I say this to make the point that, quite frankly, I fell into the Carifesta trap. I looked at the data, I listened to the comments made by my colleagues at KFIL. I see that Dr. Henderson Carter has left. And so I was quite prepared, actually. I had to change my speech. Come in here and lambaste the administration. How could you have said this and then what? All this times now inflated the amount that's finally spent on Carifesta. In fact, up until yesterday, I was probably still going to say that. And then I listened to the leader of government business. And again, these are not terms the average Barbadian knows. Appropriation bill, the estimates bill, the programs and expenditure, and the outcomes document, and how these documents need to be read really as one to understand what is really happening in the whole public accounts financing. The average Barbadian does not know that. Did you know that? Many of us did not know that. And so, like doctors, I think that any administration has a responsibility, especially when you may have people who, for good, or let me say also, with bad intentions, may try to give others the impression of nefarious activity. You have a responsibility to come and say, listen, I know this doesn't make sense to you as a householder, that you will only say that this thing is going to cost $4 million. And even when I saw the $4 million, I thought, this is $4 million? All of these events that I went to, and I went to some, Senator Archer, I didn't stay out too late because I'm not that age anymore, but I went to some of the events and I consumed some of the low calorie, low salt things on offer. But, water. But I thought 4 million. I said, well, maybe I just got my maths wrong. But when I saw the total amount, I said, well, this is crazy. These are things that have to be explained. Walk with the public. Say to them, listen, this is just a holding number or whatever fee, mobilization fee, whatever. And that eventually this is how much it is likely to cost. And certainly if I knew that Carrie Festa costed 21 million back in 1982, 81, thank you, Senator King. I know you know Carrie Festa very well. I would never have thought that the amount that it costs today was exorbitant. So my caution, and I know that Senator Niles to my left, I just realized that I am flanked by two Andrews, maybe not St. Andrews, but Andrews, two wise men. Have a conversation and prevent this happening in the future. I've titled my presentation, no surprise to you, Mr. President, a clinical diagnosis of the 2026 budgetary proposals. As an academic from Cave Hill, I will not attempt to grade the budget because I know that brings about a lot of strong emotions, especially if the grade is below a 7 or even a 6.5. But what I will say, and a 6.5 for the record, those of you in medicine know, a 6.5 in my fraternity, in my faculty is a distinction or honors grade. Huh? We don't go above 7. I learned a few things. First of all, the 2026 fiscal strategy is defined mainly under 3 main pillars as I see it. There's crisis mitigation, where there's an aggressive intervention to shield households from the 66% spike on the global oil prices. I don't need to explain to the average Barbadian out there why this spike is occurring. Just tune in to MS Now or CNN. There is social protection, the introduction of the Barbados Republic Child Health Fund, significant expansion of the reverse tax credit, and a cost of living cash credit for the most vulnerable, including pensioners like my mom and those with special needs. And the third pillar, Mr. President, economic diversification, which we heard a lot in this very chamber. The launch of the Green Industrialization Gateway Advantage strategy, aiming to increase the industrial sector's GDP contribution from 6% to 25% within a decade by targeting high-value sectors like AI and life sciences, things that are near to my heart and Senator Reid as well, and advanced manufacturing. But of course, while this is robust and the country has marked 19 consecutive growths in our economy, quarters of growth in our economy, and a record low unemployment, I am told, of 6.1%, and I'm going with a leap of faith, as Senator Stinkler said. These figures are accurate. The government warns that there is global geopolitical instability, so that we cannot sit as Bajans now and say next month, God forbid, whatever happens, but how you could come back and tell us this when you said in the budget or this, we were going to get this. Things are going to change, Mr. President. We are not living in usual times. And so, the treatment plan evaluation, the way I see it, wearing a medical lens, of course, is that you have a painkiller, initially just for a short-term fix, and then there's longer physiotherapy, or as Senator Cummings will probably get to know a lot more of, rehabilitation. The painkillers, I see it, are VAT caps on gasoline at 47 cents and diesel at 37 cents. Cost of living, freight caps at 3,000 per 20-foot containers. I have to admit it was challenging but also exciting going through these data. And finally, expanding the QEH capacity, which is closer to my home, by 40%. Those are the painkillers. Then there's the long-term physiotherapy of accelerated EV transitions and off-peak grid tariffs, aggressive local food production, and let me just insert in there healthy food production, which is what we should be aiming for, kitchen gardens, which I am attempting unsuccessfully, and also in Minister Cummins's neck, the WHO best buys and aggressive NCD preventions. So cost of living measures are appreciated, but they're just temporary. And like Panadols or paracetamol, when the problem has not been fixed, we can expect some pain to return. So the average Barbadian out there, this is not an eradication of a sickness. This is a painkiller to get us through it. And yes, the government is putting things in place, from my observation, in the long term, but the long-term prognosis or even trajectory of what we are experiencing is very much unknown. And then under Head 86, learning terms now like Head 86, which speaks specifically to health. And I, of course, feel pressure to speak about health for obvious reasons. Treating symptoms but ignoring causes is what I've titled this. You see a tertiary care institution that is really, of the 485.7 million health budget, is taking up 203.5 million. That's significant. That is significant. The average Barbadian does not understand public health finance. Before even they're seen by a doctor, which may take 3 days, I know, they want a CT scan because someone has watched Grey's Anatomy or whatever is on and saying, this is what you do when you go to hospital. No one knows the cost of healthcare. Quite often, for the frequent flyers, not the patients who are legitimately sick, and not American Airlines. For the frequent flyers, these are patients who are what we call recurring decimals. You know, they come over and over, and many of them have no choice because they're genuinely, their conditions, they have to present. The number one admission to the hospital, which I'm seeing, because I'm on call today, the university team is on call, is heart failure. We're going to see the same people coming in. Some may argue this is a failure of our health system. Mr. President, I argue this is not. This is a success of our health system, because these very patients who would have died, unfortunately, of a heart attack 10, 20 years ago, or even 30, when I was an intern, they're now living to experience, unfortunately, a cycle of heart failure. This is costly. Every time someone comes in heart failure, a whole battery of drugs have to be given. Investigations have to be done. Nursing staff have to be placed on these patients. Some of them may need ventilation and intensive care. These are not things that are cheap. And quite often, and I know that the Ministry of Education certainly has taken some slack for it, quite often I wonder whether people would be less critical if the cost of the health care they received was shared with them. Sometimes I wonder that. This leaves, Mr. President, from my calculation, a very small 2.28 million for preventive care. This is serious. Because I just said to you, we can't afford health care. So if you're going to have an impact on the health issue, the only thing that we can afford, and I said this in Geneva about 4 years ago, the only thing small island development states can really afford is prevention. If we don't invest in prevention, we are literally doomed. When I was an intern at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in 2000, I appreciated the standard of care. And as Mr. President, you may know, interns, students, medical students, we go to other universities, hospitals, we do electives. You do that to compare the quality of care that you're seeing in the hospital based on where you've gone. I went to King's College and I think Cornell University because I had aspirations of being an orthopedic surgeon before I found out it was just a lot of carpentry. But I was in that setting and realized, oh wait, but this isn't much different from what I am experiencing at home. I mean, New York is colder, of course. That is not the same thing in 2026. The cost and the amount of equipment and the technology involved and the automation is significant. And even as I go there, and as part of my training, I was at St. Thomas's Hospital as part of King's College London, I said, but this is unrealistic for a small island developing country to afford. This is unreal. So all that we can do is to provide the minimum safe practice for patients coming to the hospital. The average Barbadian does not understand that. Unless you travel and you go to a hospital overseas and are met with this bill, and you realize the CT scan is not $250, right? Then you don't understand it, you don't get it. And so you feel, but I pay my taxes, I want the scan. That's not how healthcare works. Now, my hypothesis as a scientist is there is a problem at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And I use the analogy in this very chamber. And I can reflect on it, having experienced an unpleasant event recently in Jamaica. When you go to a hotel, it doesn't matter how luxurious the lobby is, how many stalls they have, how comfortable the seats are, how welcoming the front desk staff are. It really does not matter. The only thing on your mind when you get to a hotel after a whole day of traveling is to get a room. If you can't get a room, and the people at the Pegasus kept a very angry check-in person happy, but after a few hours I was annoyed. I said, I want a room. I don't want another complimentary drink, not rum punch, I had fruit punch. I don't want you to give me any other tokens, I just want my room. This is exactly what is happening at the hospital. If you expand an emergency department, you are essentially expanding the lobby. The room space is still not increased. And so all that you've done is really expanded a space where people can feel a little bit more comfortable. You haven't changed the room space. You can put patient liaison officers, you can do whatever. People are still going to be on, as was reported in media, on the floor, on beds, what was it? Lowered to the floor level, as if that is any better, but as beds lowered to the floor level, but it's not where patients are meant to be. Let me also tell you, Mr. President, it is not just about comfort. Patient care will be affected. ER nurses are trained for the emergency room. They're not meant to be going from patient to patient administering care in a sequential basis because they have the many emergencies that are coming in. You only have to listen to the radio, as Senator Walters said. An emergency will come in. I know how my call is going to look today because already I know what incident has occurred that will disrupt the A&E staff, and therefore the referrals, the heart failures, the internal medicine will be delayed because of it. They're not meant for that. So you have nurses now working in situations where they have to deal with emergencies, they have to deal with ward cases. You can't ignore the ward cases because a miserable consultant is going to come and say, why my patient hasn't gotten this and by this time. You can't do that. We have a problem. And so, as I watch the expansion of the A&E department, it's a very nice emergency room when it's not saturated. I said, how long is this really going to last? And as predicted, within a few weeks or even days, surges. Every day the QEH has a surge, so we are now at a plateau high. We've reached capacity. The internal medicine wards are saturated. Internal medicine, by the way, accounts for about 70 to 75% of the admissions. As one of my colleagues says, if you're not pregnant, if you're not under 16, or you haven't been stabbed or got a gunshot, which is still very possible now, you're internal medicine, until proven otherwise. We admit a lot of patients. The last university on-call take admitted 25 patients on the on-call. That is significant. Mr. President, do you know that there are people who could be admitted to hospital receive all of their care in the emergency room, which I've already flagged is not the ideal place, and be discharged from the emergency room days later. That is unsatisfactory, and we have to fix that. We need more beds. And so this hospital expansion, I welcomed it because we need more spaces where people can receive proper care. But of course, beds cannot treat patients. They get made more comfortable, but beds can't treat patients. At the end of the day, healthcare professionals treat patients. Healthcare professionals are expensive, not only doctors, the other categories as well. Training is also long. I said to, I think it was Senator Trim yesterday, there's only one clinical pharmacologist in this country and in this region, myself, and she asked, well, why is that? To train in clinical pharmacology takes 13 years. I mean, that's an investment. To train in many specialties like surgical subspecialties take longer than that. Neurosurgery, for instance, can take much longer from the time you become a student and you qualify. I make that point to make another important point. When we train people, we have to retain them. If we don't retain them, we have lost a significant investment in our people. And we've lost not just a financial investment, but these are people who are difficult to recruit. Despite our beaches, Mr. President, there is no doctor that is going to leave New York to come to Barbados to set up with their family at a high cost of living, at a salary that is much reduced for the beaches. They may do it for 2 or 3 weeks, but that's not going to continue. The people who return to this country are Bajans who went to Harrison College or any of the other schools. Of course, I would mention St. John first. That was a slip. The other schools, and they want to return home. These are scholarship winners, people who have their families at home. Quite frankly, Mr. President, they want to return home because they have family commitments and they want to give back to their country. And I know I will close on citizenship shortly. We can't afford this bottleneck and this painstaking. One of my colleagues described it as torture in applying to return home. Someone who trained in the US, trained at UWI, specialized in the US, and could not come back here. In fact, she would have qualified as a specialist in the United States. She came back here and was told, you have to work as a junior doctor for a year. Now, if this person didn't want to be back home, they would be in the US making 5 times the amount as an internist. And yeah, I check the salaries daily. So this is something we have to, it cannot be a bureaucratic bottleneck. We cannot have administrative staff saying, we sent an email response 3 months later. That is unsatisfactory. And if we don't get past that, we will have a problem. I also have a serious issue with us putting all the blame of the hospital as a money problem. All of it is not a money problem. A lot of it is an attitude problem. You know how I know it's an attitude problem? Sometimes when I am in the emergency room, as I will be sometime tonight, I observe things. Mr. President. I observe, for instance, the man who is in the chair sitting and is trying to get to the restroom. The nurse who walks by him, the doctor, the intern, the medical student who walks by, everyone is in their zone. No one stops, Mr. President. We now have an attitude at the hospital that I think has to change. I know it has to change. Where is the empathy? Where is the compassion? Where is the professionalism? The patient shouts at you, you don't shout back at them. That's not how it works, right? And yes, I don't think this happened overnight because people are working longer hours. They're seeing cases that they shouldn't have to see. They're complaining about they ain't getting paid enough. They're working double shift, triple shifts. The nurses sometimes, they're frustrated. So I can almost understand the frustration. I don't use it as an excuse. And as one nurse in the emergency start room said to me, you just want everything for your patients done now. I won't go that far, but I want it done quickly. And I admit I can be a bit miserable sometimes when I don't get things done because I expect a certain standard of care. We have to insist on this standard, whether it is training, whether we need to get rid of bad apples, whether we need to get new apples, whatever it is, whether we need to change the oranges, we need to change the culture. It cannot continue. When a clinic starts at 9, like this Honourable Chamber started at 10, exactly at 10, 10 means 10. You can't have people coming into clinic 2, 3, 4 hours later. It is disrespectful, and it is not sad. It is not good medicine. I also have a concern that we are now in a situation of fragmented medical care. When I say fragmented, I mean doctors are doing their own thing, nurses are doing their own thing, social workers are doing their own thing. This happens when people are stressed. You know, you will look after your stuff. The social worker, you're supposed to deal with the social stuff. Look after that. The nurses doing their own thing. So I about the nursing. The doctors, of course, some of us might have an attitude. And they, well, I don't care what the rest of them doing at all. I do my own thing and I'm in charge. This is fragmented care. The reason why many relatives out there are frustrated with what's happening in the hospital is simple communication. They can't find out what's wrong with their relative. The reason why they can't, because sometimes the issue that they want to discuss is a nursing issue. The nurse, the doctors may not be communicating best with each other, and therefore it is difficult for them to communicate as a team to the patient. Mr. Cummins, one of the main things I hope to see in short order is that there is a communication policy that is clearly articulated to the public. No one should have to be waiting 2, 3, 4 days to find out who is their relative doctor, which ward they're on, when are they going to be discharged. These are not secrets. These are things that should be discussed openly. And with technology, you should be able to take out your phone, send a WhatsApp to whatever number, find out who your doctor is, set up an appointment, get all of that sorted. That is not rocket science. I want to move, I told you I read the estimates and I learned some new jargon, so now I'm going to show off a bit and describe it. So I call this a diagnostic anomaly, and I hope that Minister Cummins can respond to it. But again, so that we don't have another Carrie Festa fiasco or fireworks, I see here in 2024 to 25, 5.3 million kind of given here in the figure from the estimate for 2025 to 26, 26, 27, then 27 to 28, there's a spike from 5.3 to 8.5 million. There is no narrative in the estimate. 85.6, yeah, million. There's no narrative in the estimate that speaks, there's an explanation. Now, you know, as we have heard, when it happens, and we are here in 2027, God's willing, you will hear where this comes. So please explain where that is coming from, or what is the major thing that's there, because the Sanitation Service Authority is now back. Thank you for that clarification. You see, I tell you, you learn something every day here. Let us not confuse ourselves, Mr. President, that health is only a QEH tertiary care level. Health is a social determinants level. One of my close colleagues, Professor Justin Romson, and I always have this debate, because we don't argue as academics. We had a debate. What happens in my faculty could have been prevented in his faculty 10, 20 years before. The social determinants are what has gotten us here as a country. The one thing, though, we have to be careful about is saying to Barbadians and any person out there, in order to be healthy, just change your lifestyle. Just don't have the whiskey and ginger ale downstairs. Or have, I know people are going to be washing their plate, only half the plate of salad and maybe avoid the extra condiments. That is choice. That is choice. Everyone would say that is your choice, and it's your choice where you're unhealthy. But the public health data, especially from the WHO 2023 report, does not support that at all, Mr. President. We are literally, yes, genetics, Senator Reid said, but we are literally where we live. Let me use the example I just used. If certain things were not available in the buffet downstairs, we can consume it. We are a product of our environment. We change our behavior and our public health risk changes when our environment changes. There's studies done from the CDRC, GA-CDRC, looking at walkability in cities. Cities where there's more walkability, there's more physical activity. You don't have to say to people, you need to move more. They move more because it's safer. They're not going to get knocked over by a ZR. They're not going to get, their cycle lanes. You will do things because your environment has changed. The hospital cafeteria has finally been reopened. And so I remember to celebrate the reopening on my post-call day with the medical team. I almost made the mistake of treating the entire team to breakfast, and I realized there were about 20 of them. I said, let's go to the cafeteria. And when I looked at the cafeteria offerings, I said, maybe we'll just have some coffee. There's everything fried, possibly even water. There was pumpkin fritters, fish cakes. And I was curious because I saw a relative eating fish. I said, you're eating fish cakes? Where you get these fish cakes at 6:30 in the morning? Oh, the cafeteria. Everything that is sending the wrong message. And I know that the CEO is already investigating it because I've complained about it. That has to change. You can't go to a cafeteria and not be able to get a fruit salad or you can now. Good, you see? Action already. But that has to change. You have to be sending the correct message. You can't also be on the ward as a heart failure patient, the same one I spoke about, and be getting food with added salt. One man said to me a couple months ago when I saw him in the clinic, he said, but you're a real hypocrite though. You telling me about cut back on this, cut back. When I was in hospital, the same things you tell me cut back on is the same nuggets, the luncheon meat, the same thing. And all I could do when I see this in hospital is apologize because I have no control over what is provided. Now, there is a nutrition department and we have nutrition standards. If we cannot control the hospital environment, and remember I said behavior changes based on environment, then we are really hopeless, right? We are hopeless. So that needs to change. I'm not going to spend the entire hour speaking. However, I will say that I will close on something that is closer to my heart, and believe it or not, is outside of health. I have a strong problem with the way our society has changed with respect to citizenship. I have the privilege of interacting with young people every day, and we have an emergency, or at least an urgency in this country in terms of citizenship. Not just respect for each other, but I get the distinct impression that many of younger, older Barbadians in general, for us it's all about what is the country doing for me. The common thing is, what is in the budget for me? Quite frankly, everything in the budget is for you. It's the budget of your country. So everything in the budget relates to you, and we need to address this. I had a conversation recently returning from Jamaica with the Chief Education Officer, Dr. Ramona Archer Bradshaw, and I'm happy to say that citizenship will be reincorporated into schools. I think that service also needs to be reincorporated. Discipline needs to be reincorporated. I spoke about the pet peeve about, and I know that my fellow alumna, as in the other place, spoke about this. You are how you are how you dress, how you deport. I say to the staff that I work with, if you are showing up in the ER looking like you should be on a stretcher yourself, how is a patient supposed to have confidence in you? You know, you show up for work, you dress the part. If you want to be out in the fet, I see Senator Arch isn't here. Senator Ford is. And you dress appropriately. You know, you don't come like, I am not a scrubs person. I don't like wearing scrubs because I'm not a surgeon. But you know, you dress up. I still dress up for clinic because when I go to clinic, I want to present a appearance to patient that I know what I'm talking about. Hopefully, I do know what I'm talking about, and that I am approaching this in a professional way, and that I value the time they spend, and I value the interaction. This needs to stop. I literally see some school kids in Oystins as I'm avoiding a pothole going to work, and sandwiched between two ZRs going, and the pants is down by the knees. One student, I stopped to let him pass. He couldn't even run across at the crossing, Mr. President, because his pants would fall off. Now, at an institution known for its discipline in St. John, that would never have been allowed in my time. I can't speak for now, though, Canon Rogers. It would never have been allowed in my time. In fact, if you're on the street, that's the one time you want to look picture perfect, because someone's going to see you and report you back to the principal. I'm saying this to say you cannot come and say that you're serious about crime and violence when the public health process that started years before in schools, you haven't addressed. You have the indiscipline there. You're, quite frankly, fostering it there. You're not addressing it. But then when it happens, you're shocked. Why is there this indiscipline? Because it started years before. You can see the train approaching. I'm going to close by saying that I want to congratulate the Minister of Health and Wellness on the initiative she has called Health Transformation, or the Transformation Task Force. Because what has happened in health, in my mind in recent times, has been quick fixes. There has to be a holistic approach to how we manage health. You can't fix the hospital and leave primary care by itself. You can't fix primary care and leave social determinants by themselves. I see things in the financial statements that speak to, in the appropriation bill that speak to the engagement of the Ministry of, I didn't even know this existed, by the way, Ministry of Religious Affairs, Labor, and Ecclesiastical Affairs, which I know is dear to Senator Rogers' heart. I think this is a perfect opportunity for health to be in the community. When you think about it, church is a captive audience. There's discipline. There's regular attendance, even in Anglican churches. There is, I can say that because I'm an Anglican. There is a message that is given. We need to kind of marry religion and health so that churches are seen as wellness places as well. Like the Seventh-day Adventists, I went to school at the Seventh-day Adventists. My parents tried hard. And it was for that very reason, that whole Christianity and discipline of thought and morality, those kind of things are important. So I would like to see that dovetail into community outreach in a holistic, and I think the Anglican community has already started this at a national level. That also reminded me, however, that we also need to dovetail with culture. We cannot lose what I call valuable union between health and culture. Because culture changes behavior, and behavior influences culture. And so you need the cultural practitioners on board, the behavioral psychologists, so that you get people moving a lot more in these festivals. I know Trinidad, for instance, has done a lot of innovative things. You may not even see it, but they have separate water stations and socoholics. When you think about this, and I know, speaking to the senators on my left, every year we have a group of people who are physically unfit, have never gone to a gym, will never go to a gym, jumping behind loud music in the hot sun. When else are you going to see that? I even saw Senator Walters jumping, right? Not that he doesn't go to the gym. So it doesn't matter where your level of culture can transform you. Culture can transform you. And the same way that we can use it in that way, there's no way we can bring that in health as well. Let me just close by saying that I want to give an honest assessment of the bills as read. I stood as an independent senator. My aim here was not to make an administration look good. It also was not to make an administration look bad. I also stood as an academic, and I recognize the importance of the academic voice and the freedom of expression of that voice. I want to caution us as a country, especially if we are intent on maintaining this vibrant democracy which we hold so steadfast to, that this voice should not only not be silenced, but it should be encouraged. And so when academics at the K-Phil campus, for instance, critique governments and administrations on their policies and they give various grades, you have to accept some of it. Some of it may be politically motivated, but a lot of it isn't. You cannot be seen as so critical, or not your observers will say, well, hang on, why are you so thin-skinned about everything? I want to caution us that academic freedom goes hand in hand with our democracy. I pledge to support, Mr. President, what works. I plan to always challenge, though, what does not work, and I always plan to champion the well-being of this country and its health and wellness. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Dr. Connell. Senator, the Honourable Jonathan Reed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good day to all the colleagues. I saw it was your plan to, the light is still on. It was your plan to go all the way to lunch, but I tried to squeeze in. And like everyone before me, I tried not to take nearly the hour to get through. Unlike the other colleagues, I don't know if you have, Senator Cummings, have you had the honor or grueling task of going through the well? You've done it before? Yes. Well, I'm the only one in here this year that's done it this year, so I already spent 7 hours being drilled on all the what's and the hows and all those types of different things. A lot of time was spent on when I was going to deliver things, even last year. And so I wanted to not do that this year, or in this presentation. I am mindful that I did mention previously that my ambition wasn't to ever rise in this house in either chamber. And I have been tasked with an opportunity to help the country move forward, and it's something I think that in the moment in time, I could add good value in. And so I want to spend a little day talking a little bit about the why and the how I intend to lead the ministry to do that this year. A lot of the conversations previously are talking about how do we collide with the estimates and get specific to the numbers. And like many in here, I'm not an accountant. I really do love economics, but I'm not an economist myself. And so I had a specific advantage. I don't know if anyone else in the cabinet had this advantage of spending a lot of time when the Prime Minister took up her second term with her and her finance team. And I was innovation advisor for the first term. I became chief of staff for the second term. And the very first meeting, I think I said this in here before, the very first meeting she had was with the finance team, coming out of a long, difficult period of managing very tightly the financial strains, not being able to restructure the Ministry of Finance the way she had intended, coming into the role as Prime Minister. We had a meeting that started at, it must have been 10 o'clock. We didn't finish until about 6:30 in the evening, not a biscuit, not a piece of cheese, maybe bottled water. I know we shouldn't say that, but it was grueling, and she went through every single line. I didn't understand 95% of the codes, the subsections, the subheadings. I did not know it. But the level of depth and pockets of money and restructuring things and what 1 or 2 meant and all those ranges, 2 to 6 and all those types of different codes, I had no clue those things existed. And in that moment, I think I really understood that running a country well, is that, that Jim Carver thing, is the economy stupid? I think I understood in that moment what that meant, right? All your social programs and your ambitions and all of those. And the level of depth you had to do to be able to actually run a country well in the business of public finance and public accounts. So I agree. I think what Senator Niles, and I went through it last night, went through it yesterday, was very good. But I'll give you my own personal experience. Having taken up the role as minister and spent maybe 5 years going to estimates and watching ministry after ministry get absolutely ripped to shreds and ruled, it's true. A lot of detail, a lot of precision, a lot of why didn't you deliver this? I couldn't quite understand why ministries didn't spend what they were supposed to spend, how they allocated things. I really didn't understand. I really didn't understand why weren't you able to deliver on your programming. And then for me, it was the complexity of what the estimates were as a lay person, as a non-public accounting professional. How can I, as a non-public accounting professional, get to the end result I want using the number one tool I have, which is the public accounts? So I tried to solve that. The only way I knew how is to build a solution. So I don't know if I can formally do this, but I will. I'll take the risk, at risk of risking your I built a platform, and I'll show it, where I placed all of the estimates into a platform that I could understand every single component of my ministry. So I run the ministry live. I know every single number. I know, and I presented this to my cabinet colleagues. I know where every single thing is. I could see every single transaction live. I know what subsections, what subheadings. I could know who has not spent, who has spent, where every single thing goes. I have it all, right? I've run it live. And I'll share with the colleagues in cabinet, and it's going to be made available for everyone, and we could go in much more detail. Well, you're on the camera to pick it up. Well, I mean, the camera can't see, but I have it. It's true. It's fine. But I could share it. But I didn't do it to show off. I just showed it to my process of, I'm showing off. I'm just trying to get the work done. I'm just trying to do the work. Right? But that connects with, really I wanted to talk about the why, because when I first took up the job, I had a meeting with all members of staff of the ministry, and I said to them, well, I am not a selfish person, but I do have one very selfish ambition in this job, and I need to be the best performing person in next year's estimates, and I need a path to get there. And the only way I can do that is if I understand the numbers and your ability to deliver on the program. I inherited the program. The number was already built into stone. It was $77 million. I didn't choose it. I could alter some things. I could make an appeal to cabinet to change some things, but for the most part, I inherited a program that existed. I need to deliver this program at a level of acceptance above 75%. And that means I had to spend the money and deliver the programs. The only way we could do that is if I was able to track every single thing. So that's what I set out to do. So the why, then I had to figure out the how, which is why we built a platform. And this platform, I want to give him a plug because I did it in the presentation in the well, was built by someone I knew since he was 21 years old, Christian Payne. When I met him, no formal, he went to St. Michael's, we were like that, no formal university education. He was telling me about agentic AI 2-3 years before it came into vogue. So we built a platform using the agentic AI to be able to track everything. So the level of specification we can do on this is incredible. Locally built, incredible, and we're doing more, right? I'm meeting him tomorrow, actually, to do even more. And so we started with that and driving to, that was the purpose, that was the why, and that was my how. And so I want to collide that with the overall framing of these estimates and this debate. And the why is really transitioning Barbados's posture in a very adversarial moment in time where there's wars, there's concerns about all types of things, many of which we did not create. There are local problems that exist that are of our making and we haven't solved ourselves, and we must collide and contend with and solve. And so you're tempering the need for problems with ambition. And ultimately, that's what this estimate says to me. You have problems and challenges, and you're meeting it with ambition. You have resources that you didn't have previously, and you're going to do things that you could not imagine doing previously, but you must still be in the business of solving problems for yourself, some of which you created, and some of which you did not create. End of story. And these are some strategies that we have to get that done. And so I want to drill down the specificity of my ministry, quite frankly, because I did some research when I first started the job, and the ministry didn't exist before 2018. It's the first time it was assembled. And I went all the way back to 2020, and the first budget this ministry was allocated was $18,928,000. It grew a little bit, 31 million in 2021, 46 million in 2022, 40 million in 2023, 57 million in 2024, as I said, 77 million last year, and this year, we got it up to $165 million. Now, I got a little pressure from some of my colleagues about the scale of that lift, but I said, quite frankly, it is just directly related to the ambition that's set out in BERT 3.0. The pillars of BERT 3.0 are related to industrialization and digital development. Two of the three pillars on that, which live within this ministry. So I could argue I don't think I got enough, quite frankly, but we will deliver and then we will go again. And driven in the presentation, in this same room of estimates, I walked in with the team. I sat where Senator Ford is sitting down. Across from me was the Director of Finance. If you met the Director of Finance before, he is a straight shooting, strong public finance officer who said, Minister, your section on cybersecurity, these numbers are wildness. I said, DFE, the numbers are what the numbers are. The number that we've allocated to cybersecurity is more than the ministry had for the entire ministry in 2021. The numbers are what the numbers are. If you are going to transition into a space of digital transactions, digital infrastructure, and I'll get to your point about data centers shortly, yesterday, if you're going to be a place of an advanced society where people expect services at the speed of light, you need infrastructure to be able to do that. And that infrastructure has to be secured. So it's very, very apparent to me that there needs to be a deeper collision with what the country has said it's going to do and the reality of what these things cost. And again, these costs are not manufactured just by us. These manufacturers are the price of what it costs to do these things in the world. And so I set about this thought really around where this moment in time that we are, that we decided to be truly ambitious in a very difficult time. And this is the only kind of emotional part I'll get to. I'll do it. Because I think Barbados has given up, and I say this as someone who chooses to be Barbadian every day, right, in everything I do, right? I wasn't born here, but I choose to be Barbadian, and I reflect that in everything I do every single day. Now, one of the things that does affect me is I think there are two core things that we gave up as words that are powerful words, and we convert them to negative words. The word happy, that we turn the word happy into a negative statement, right? Look at he's so happy. And the other word is then great, that we turn great into a bad thing. How can you turn great into a bad thing? And the other word, and the third word that I see us being on the edge of turning into a negative thing, and I'm mindful of the entreaty that Senator Connell ended with in terms of not going after the academics, but I'll give them a little skirmish, a little small jab, in that the over-criticism about, and the usage of the word ambitious to describe economic and national development strategy, and ambitious as a negative term, is dangerous. I fundamentally disagree with saying something is ambitious in a negative tone. I think you must collide ambition with a plan and strategy and a pathway to achieve, 100%. But inherently considering ambitious negative, I think is faulty, right? And I'll say why. We spend a lot of time, I'm guilty of it, right? I speak a lot about Singapore and Rwanda and Estonia and places that, some places I've been, some places I haven't been, and you look at the numbers and what they've been able to do of exponential growth in short periods of time is amazing. And we compare ourselves to these things, and sometimes we're a little bit hard on ourselves. I think actually sometimes we're very hard on themselves, because not a single one of these, despite whatever hardships they went through, are 200 years removed from being a slave society. Not one of them. Not one of them are removed from being considered the single poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. These are things that are part of the DNA of who we are, that we had to recover from and build from. 10 years into becoming an independent country, we decided that every single Barbadian has the right to be educated. I mean, what could be more fundamental about that? But in that moment, understand the level of bravery and ambition it took to make that decision. And then after that, decades, we just stack truly amazing, ambitious decisions after each other in terms of state-subsidized healthcare, Tenantry Free Flow Act. We make decisions that are bold and brave and ambitious, and it defines who we are. And that's who we are. Now, are they always easy to understand in the moment? No. Sometimes it's difficult to understand in the moment. Does everyone have to agree in the moment? No. But the time shows us that for the most part, we have made these incredible decisions that allow us to outsize our development curve in relation to the fact that less than 300,000 people, less than 200 square miles, tiny place, no diamonds, no oil, none of those things. Despite all that, people, when you bring people here, it feels and behaves like a country that's about $35,000 GDP. It doesn't behave like, it doesn't feel like what it presents as on paper. It feels different because of these specific decisions that are ambitious and brave that both sides of the aisle have made over a period of 60 years. Incredible. So turning 60 this year, what is this new phase of ambition that we're going to enter into? What is this moment in time and what does it reflect? And I think when we think about that, we shouldn't only just talk about ambition and bravery in the big lofty things, right? You know, Tenantry Free Flow Act, big lofty ambitious thing, right? There are also tiny things that we do. You know one I pass the East Coast all the time, and for my daughter going to school because the traffic is bad, so I don't even go to West Coast Road. And I see East Coast Road. And I think, wow, 25 years ago, this is where Party Monarch was. 25,000 people on that hill. Yeah. Lyric flying in a hand glider landing on the stage. We won that crowd before we even touched the stage, right? Do you remember, anyone over there? Where they blew into the water? Yes. Before he even got on the stage, he won the crowd. I mean, that was I get goosebumps just thinking about it. Incredible. The ambition to host something there, the planning involved, the sophistication, blocking off the roads, all those kind of things. I tell my daughter who's 14 years old, I sound like an old man. It's like, oh, Barbados used to be so much cooler. Barbados used to be so much braver than it is now in many ways, right? That was incredible, right? And then you think Barbados is a place that every week, when I was 14, 15, some interesting thing, someone was trying to sail across the Atlantic, someone was swimming around the island. Every week it was like, it felt like something interesting was happening, right? We were brave, we were ambitious. And there's a decision we made collectively about leaning into our growth and leaning into comfort. And that's not a bad thing, eh? Leaning into comfort, you earn the right to be comfortable after spending a long time not being comfortable. You earn that right. We did. We worked for that. But there needs to be some segment of society that is always searching for discomfort, they search for new, pushing ambition, right? And the truth is, that's what I have truly set out for this ministry that I have the pleasure of leading to be. That can the ministry be a catalyst in a constructive, progressive way to be a risk taker? I was so moved by my colleague in the other place, Minister Humphrey's question, when he led into, I didn't expect him to say it the way he did. He's my neighbor, so he was very generous, of where's the space in government for risk-taking? Where's the space in government that tries something new? How are you doing that? And how are you balancing that with the fact that you're using the public purse? Because you can't be wasteful, and you have to do it for positive impact. But how are you navigating that? How are you thinking about that? And I was like, oh, I love the question. It was perfect. And I obsess over that, quite frankly. I obsess with the fact that here is a ministry that effectively has 4 pillars: innovation, technology, science, and industry. And I will start with science. It was the least funded of all, out of 77 million, it had $700,000 when I took the role. It's increased marginally, it's like 3 million, it needs to be a lot more. But it was the first meeting I had with the second meeting I had with the staff was the science division. And I'm nerdy, right? I love to read. So I pulled up when they went to the meeting and I asked the head of science, do you know who Vanier Bush is? She's like, Minister, I don't know who that is. And I said, Well, he invented the National Science Foundation in the United States of America. And everything you see with DARPA, all those type of things, America's huge investment into science as the engine of growth, building out the universities in the East Coast in Boston and the West Coast out of California around science and what that means for industrialization, he started that. And I said, he was very, very simple, that science is the engine for national development. That if you are not creating a new for yourself, you will not solve your hardest problems. You will not solve your problems of health. You will not solve your problems of industry. You will not solve your problems of mobility. You cannot allow others to solve these things for you. You must be ingenious enough and allow people to have the skill and capacity to be able to solve it for yourself. And I said to her, that's what I saw the science division being. Yes, I agree and support. In fact, when I leave here at lunch, we have the National Science Festival in Queen's Park for school kids right now going on. And so a huge part of it will be about public education around science and ensuring that science is that class that is most exciting as part of education transformation in my esteem, and in my mind. But beyond this kind of entry level of thinking about science, how can we become a global hub for research and development? How can new ideas originate by Barbadians to the world, and the world coming to Barbados and originate the best ideas, leaving the IP there and scaling to the world? Why can't we be a hub for those things? What prevents us from doing it when we've already been a place of invention in so many different ways? Nothing prevents us from doing it but will. Do we have the will to be those things? And can we leverage the unique opportunity of relationships, of a global, moral, strategic leader in the Prime Minister that attracts global players to be in Barbados and operate from Barbados as a tool for economic development leveraging science? And I believe it, and that's what we've been doing. We are about to finalize a project, I'll say, it's already gone to cabinet, on establishing a relationship with Waterloo University. Waterloo University is the most advanced artificial intelligence public program in the world, most advanced quantum computing campus in the world. They're going to use Barbados as a satellite hub for the pursuit of the difficult problems that suit island settings, and that researchers are going to be commingling with researchers here and building solutions from here. The IP will live here, and the things they build here will exist and emanate out from here. We're going to do even more than that. I had the pleasure of, I try to do it quite often, personally and in my role, of going places where you see what's next. Last week I was at NVIDIA's conference in California. And I think, like, I invite anybody, if you want to see what 2 years, 3 years is going to look like, you should go to that. It's just insane. And 2 years ago when I went, the whole range were around, anyone who's into tech, maybe Senator Malo likes this kind of stuff, is around language models. Everything was obsessive language models, obsessed. How many parameters you would have, 10 billion, 20 billion. And I was like, well, this is cool, but like, how is the real world application of these things? And it's cool science, but how are you applying it? I didn't go last year. I went this year, and this the extraordinary real-world application of the language models is insane. So you're talking about the CEO of Caterpillar talking about using AI to track the 500 million assets of nuts and bolts and tools and tractors that they have all over the world. Using AI in the chemistry of the paint so that the paint can survive 20 degrees below and 50 degrees in the desert. How do you use tools that you've never had access to be to optimize in the real world in a way that you've never saw it before? And I sat down and listened, okay, what is the application of all that to Barbados? And I had a little bit of a epiphany, I think. I had a moment where I truly collided what the opportunity was. And I've said it a little bit before, but I really want to go all in on it now. That I don't think there's ever been an industrialized or scaled tool, ever, in the history of mankind that is more beneficial to a small place than AI. None. That the ability to outsize your level of productivity on an individualized basis, there's no other tool, not a car, not the internet, nothing. The ability to 10x or 100x or 1000x your ability of a small population to do things, I don't think there's any other tool ever that we can use. And part of the reason we can do that, because how accessible it is. Now, it's not completely free, it's not completely cheap, but it's cheap and is widely accessible in the context of Barbados. How do we use this to be able to catapult our level of productivity in a way that is humanizing, in a way that people feel more secure in their jobs, not less secure in their jobs? How do people return time to themselves in a way that, beyond just thinking of how do I survive the day, how do I do what I need to do efficiently to give myself more time? I tell my staff that. I say, listen, we're a small ministry in terms of people. I like that, that's good. Hundreds of us are in here. We need to find a way by the end of the year that your level of output now requires 50% of the time that you took today to do it by the end of the year. And the only way I see you could do that is through using AI. Whatever you need to do to write reports faster, to be able to make calculations faster, all those things, you need to be able to drill down into those things faster. And to do that, you have to be an expert. You have to be the best at this, quite frankly, in the Eastern Caribbean. If we want to make Barbados the most developed country in the Eastern Caribbean, us in the ministry have to be the most advanced entity on artificial intelligence in the Eastern Caribbean. That's the challenge. And we'll get the training you need, we'll bring in new skills. That is the work that we have to do. And so I am truly excited by the moment, right? I mean, it's going to take some effort, it's going to take some work, there's going to be some learning curves. I know there's some trepidation for good reason, where people are concerned about what it means and what it means for them, and it's valid. No new technology ever came without people not worrying about my impact on them. Whether it's planes, we saw what happened just now in a crash. Whether it's cars, whether it's microwaves, there's always been concern about what the adverse effects of new technologies are. That is absolutely natural. But from my lens, and from what you're seeing happening with industry's adoption of it, it is not a fad. It is going to become the infrastructure on which we build global development for the foreseeable future. There's no doubt about it. And as a small space, it is clear that we have to take full advantage of that. And we can only take advantage of that if we then drill down again to the idea of ambition. I had a really interesting experience. I was walking down the street. I'm not going to say her name because she's a little bit famous in terms of my age group growing up in Barbados, but she was a popular national athlete. I'll leave it as that. And we're walking down the street in San Jose, outside the conference center, and one of my team members saw her, they're cousins, and she works at NVIDIA. Right? She was at Intel for 14 years, she now works at NVIDIA. They didn't even know that they were going to be there. And she says, well, you know, I'm going to the headquarters later, she'll meet us there. And she met us there, and then she ended up driving us to the airport. You know, Barbadians being hospitable. And she's talking, and she's like, you know, I saw your presentation, I was blown away by the ambition, how can I be part of it, tell me what you need, etc. She's having this conversation. And we're just talking, it's a long drive. And she gets to the point where she says, you know, I'm having a hard time, in a way, wrapping my head around this place in the video. I say, why? She says, because before having this role, I really thought that money was the professional's motivation. I really grew up in Silicon Valley thinking about the relationship between money and ambition. And she says, I came to this place now when I realized that's not what's motivating. She says, my boss, let me explain, my boss, who I work for, he's been here for 17 years. And he gets to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, he leaves at 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't know when he sees his family. This is what she's talking to me. And she says, when I worked out on the back of the envelope calculation of his net worth, he's worth about $600 million. Now, he's not the SVP, he's not a director, he's just a manager. And he has this network, but he's coming to work 20 hours a day because he's connecting to the purpose and the mission and the ambition of this organization. So, she says, how are you thinking about getting a country to engender that level of purpose and ambition? What are you doing to actually instill that level of drive? I didn't have an immediate answer to her, and I'm thinking about it. So if she's listening, this is my answer now. I think what we have to do, and again, connecting to ambition, is to raise the level of inspiration from the work that people who are in a fortunate space of being inspiring do. I think we spend a lot of time in public settings and public place. And there's roles for criticism. I'm not knocking that. I'm not trying to slash the democratic process, any of those things. But I think we have to be mindful of the moment we're in and thinking the balance between saying words just to say words' sake and saying words that move the needle of progress in a way that is truly impactful. What is the new value you're adding as a result of your contribution? How are you driving everything forward because of your unique perspective, because of the effort you put in? How are you seeing this as a place of moving a generation forward, not just talking about what they might wear or what they do, all those kind of things. How are you actually adding positive value? How are you being a plus and a multiplier, not just a minus and a division? And I started thinking a lot about that in preparation of this speech. And I called my permanent secretary when I was driving, and I said, I want to announce some of the things that we've discussed internally, and I want to announce them in the speech. He said, all right, of course, Minister, go ahead. And we've spent a year building a lot of technology that is complicated to understand. I spoke a little bit about it in the presentation, so open API frameworks, open data sets, sovereign cloud. Why do we need our own data center? Why do we need digital identification? Why do we need these fundamental tools to advance us forward? And these are complicated things sometimes for people to understand. So we came up with an idea of thinking about go-to-market strategies, specifically around getting the public to get involved. So at the end of May, we're going to launch a tech summit that is both introducing the new products that we built and going for a detailed, down to the common person's knowledge of where they are with technology, campaign and engagement around what are these tools and how it's going to change their life and move it forward. What is the security protocols? How is the data protected? How is their life advanced? Why are we doing these things? And we're going to deep dive into those things. We're going to launch these products into the public space, but with the public. We're going to launch a series of, I want to do them weekly, but my budget doesn't allow for it, so we'll do it monthly, innovation challenges and innovation calls to the public space. We're going to give away tokens on Cloud Code and ChatGPT and Perplexity Computer. We're going to give away compute to young Barbadians, and maybe not so young Barbadians who build an interest in things. How are you using agentic AI in whatever you're doing? You're a young doctor and you figured out something that is not yet used by the hospital, or you are a young engineer who sees a way to make the road more efficient, or whatever. You're just a kid somewhere. How are you incentivized to build those tools? We'll create that. We're going to convert a building that is under our management, ASAIT, which is the former SSA building in Vaucluse. It's 5 stories. It needs to be refurbished, and that's going through the process right now with the tender process with the National Housing. So we're going to clean up the building, and we're going to fix the things that need to be fixed so people feel comfortable and safe inside the building and it's healthy. But we're going to dedicate the entire floor of that building to becoming an innovation lab, open 24/7 to anybody. The compute will be there, the food will be there, the healthy foods, fruit salads, no chips. Food will be available, access to whoever you want, and build things from here. We're going to create a way that young Barbadians that are in the realm of innovation, science, and technology feel like a space is designed specifically them to interact with the government and solve problems. Because problems are just opportunities that are not optimized yet, quite frankly. And I live that. I live by that. And we're going to exude a level of ambition that not everyone is going to have that luxury. I'm mindful of that. Not every ministry is built on being able to carry that mandate, but this ministry must. And critically, we're going to embark probably on the most ambitious program that the country has done for a while, which is the Green Industrial Gateway Advantage. The idea behind it is you've had a country that was built with industry in mind. It existed for a long time here, and we went so broadly and big that we had Intel. Intel, this humongous behemoth of a technology company, existed here. It made things from Barbados, and it sold it to the world. And that's in our DNA. We have the DNA of making things. We make boats, we make things. We've gone away from making things because variety of things, WTO, regulations, new opportunities in financial sector, doubling down on our tourism sector. But fundamentally, to have resilience and prosperity, you have to be a country that makes things. Now, you have to make things that are in context of who you are and when you are. And the reality is that who you are is a small state with a limited supply of labor and raw materials. You have to import your raw materials, and your labor is small and is expensive. That's who you are. So what do you make? You have to make things that are very, very valuable. You have to make things that clearly the world wants at a price that you can afford to make it, which includes your profit. That means you can't make cheap things. You have to make a purposeful decision to create things that are of high value. And the only way you can do that is if you master your supply chain of where do you import things from. You have to master the science of energy and electricity, that you have the core input of power to make things at a way and a scale and a rate that allows you to do so in a way that's competitive. You have to master the ability of knowledge of creating new things. You must create new value. You can't just be a repeater of what already exists. You must build anew. And then ultimately, you must have a relationship with the world that you're not creating things just for yourself, because you're creating things for the world. And so that's really what the project is about, fundamentally. It says there are a couple areas that we think we have outsized and specific advantage on. One, we think we have the advantage around clean energy, because we're an island. We spend a lot of time thinking about optimizing the sun with solar panels and solar water heaters. We understand that well. We have 45,000 square miles of ocean space that is full of energy that we've never optimized, whether it's tidal, ocean thermal energy. We've not used it in a way that we need to use it. Can we become a research bed for those things? It turns out with Waterloo and other places, they're clamoring to be able to do research from here. Wonderful. Okay, so what are you going to use the energy for? What is the highest value of return on investment on any business right now in the world? And that's AI. Creating tokens to go towards compute. Okay, so we will create a green compute infrastructure. We will build a data center. I don't want to pick on him over necessarily, but I'll do it. Senator Slocum is on his phone. His phone is receiving data. The data lives somewhere. It doesn't just live on his phone. It connects through a data center. That data center is not going to be in Barbados right now. So it's not a sovereign-owned data center. The world that we are about to enter into, data is going to be as fundamental as oil. All right, we're already in that world. You don't give up the right to have a port or airport. Why are you giving the right to have a data center? Now, not only are you having a data center just for your needs, your data center will be a profit engine. Your data center will enable you to house global business, regional business, living on top of your data center to pay for itself, by my calculations, within 7 years. An incredible opportunity for public investment. And I'll speak about that more broadly when we do the summit. The ability for you to be able to strike on your own and be a strong, prosperous, resilient nation in 2026 and beyond will inherently depend on your sovereignty of your physical and your digital infrastructure. There's no other way. Every single country on the planet, this is dominating their thought process, right? And your level of return on investment is outsized on anything else you can do. I started the conversation with talking about the director of finance coming after me around the cost of the things that I was proposing and how I, was proposing. He said, but what about, I need to take care of the hospital, I need to take care of those. I said, I know you do, but let me get you the profits through this to be able to do more in those. And the only way you can do that is if you invest in it now. It's the only way. The cost of what per megabyte a data center will cost goes up by 20% a year. The cost of it in November is 20% more than it is, 20% less than it is now because of the war. And this is going to go increasingly up. This is the moment in time that you have to strike. And thankfully, the Ministry of Finance understood that, the Prime Minister did, the Cabinet did, and it's reflected in the estimates. This is a moment where we have to connect with what is the level of ambition that we want this country to have. How are we going to grow to this next stage of our development? What do we see for ourselves? And how do we, echo the words of many things that we've said here before, right? We've quoted the mirror image speech. We've thought about, are we brave? Are we fit for the moment? Are we fit for the time? How do we reflect that in the decisions that we make? The ministry's estimates is a direct reflection of that. That the fact that it's doubled the amount that it had the previous year is completely in line with the government's stated agenda around Birth 3.0. It's completely in line with the intention of moving from a state of sustainability and balance to a state of transformation and productivity. It's completely in line with the missions that set out by being a world-class country. It's completely in line with what the Prime Minister has been echoing for a long time, that we must rise to the occasion and become fit for purpose in a modern time. So I am wholeheartedly in support of the ambition, the program, the level of specificity that many of my colleagues presented in the well, and the acknowledgement that although difficult and not perfect, and who wants to be perfect anyway? That's boring. You don't learn from perfection. Yeah. The drive and the constant connection with we come into work every single day for the purpose of making people's lives better, making one life, making 10 lives, making 100 lives better, having a positive impact, inspiring, creating opportunity, creating a level of hope that seems to be missing. I want to end by talking a little bit more about the thing that obviously is most top of mind and people have most trepidation around. And I spoke a little bit about it before, but I'll end on it, is really around artificial intelligence. And I don't think there are two of the areas that I have, like, I think artificial intelligence will be incredible for energy, but people are not going to feel that in the same way of two other fields. One is obviously medical sciences and health. I'll challenge anyone to go and check out AlphaFold. And maybe it's not a name that's kind of common in people's language, but the 2024 Nobel laureate went to the creator of AlphaFold. And what it is, it's that it used computational chemistry and computer science to solve a 50-year problem. Well, it's more than 50 years. People couldn't figure out how proteins work, right? Proteins are very, very complicated engines in the human body. And scientists have been working on this problem for 50 years. And the invention of large language models, which OpenAI and ChatGPT is a product of OpenAI, was able to use to solve a 50-year problem in 12 months. 12 months, right? And the level of medicines and treatments and solutions that have been built off of AlphaFold, I just checked it before I got up. There have been, since 2024, 35,000 treatments have been created using that base work of AlphaFold. Things that would have taken 50 years to solve, took 2 months to solve as a result of the intervention of AI into medical science. I think anyone who's going into medicine, anyone who's thinking about health, needs to think about AI as a fundamental component of the tool in their arsenal to be way better than they could ever imagine, having more impact than they could ever imagine. And it's outsized in its benefit. That's one area. The second area that I think a lot, I told him I was going to do this, Minister Blackman in education transformation. The other area of this incredible benefit is around education. All the research shows that the most optimized way to learn, when they, go through all the different ways that people learn, is really about the one-on-one tutor. It outperforms anything else, right? You move someone from a completely 50 percentile to a 90 percentile faster with one-on-one tutor, whatever it is, whether it's knitting or race car driving or whatever you're doing, if you have a high-level performing one-on-one tutor. Well, that's what AI offers education, that you can have a personalized one-on-one tutor that understands the context of you, understands what you know, what you don't know, what you want to know, how best to get you to know this thing. And so what it can do for teaching, transforming education at a way that we've never imagined, to get to the point of actually having everyone having a one-on-one tutor for whatever you want to study, whatever course or way you like to receive information. Do you like podcasts? Do you like videos? Do you like long text? What do you want? It will build it for you in the way you want to receive it. And so then my second challenge is to the teachers, that don't be fearful of AI, embrace it. understand that what it can do for the outcome of your passion, your purpose, which is to share knowledge and build a country. It does not replace you. It will evolve your capabilities in a way that no other tool that we've created as human beings have. I think this is an incredible moment to be a small, ambitious country with a just and good, ambitious government and a brave leader. It's not going to be perfect. We'll learn things along the way. But I think if we rally together as a country, we can solve problems that are outside of our scope and within our scope with a level of ambition and effort, critically the effort to get there. With those few words, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Reid. Senator Cummings.
Mr. President, I'd like to move that we break for lunch at this time and reconvene at 2 p.m.
The question is that this sitting be suspended until 2 p.m. today. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. The ayes have it. This sitting is suspended until 2 p.m. today.